Alrighty. What a performance. Where am I? There I am. Off to a rocker. Here we go. I'm starting a bit early because I finished doing what I needed to do to prep for stream quicker than I would usually do, so I'm just kind of doing that. The Discord is popping off because I keep forgetting to mute myself when that goes on. Let me get my chat up and pause my stream. But yeah, what a performance and what a turnaround, I would say, from the second half, from the first half rather, because we were not damn it we are not we were not particularly good. Well, it's weird because it's not that we weren't good in the first half, because we were still good in the first half. It was just some specific individuals were just letting us down really badly, and we kind of paid the price for it because Wolves were very, very clinical. This game, in many ways, actually kind of reflected what I spoke about in my preview, and the fact that I knew that it would be a very counter-attacking, back-and-forth game. I mentioned that that Wolves' game against Arsenal was very much like that, where neither team really got a grasp of the ball, and it was more so just whichever team could put the ball in the net quicker won that game. This felt like that too, but we kind of steadied the ship in the second half, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into this. So I will go into the intro. I believe I fixed I muted the outro last stream, and I didn't notice until it had already been over. So I think that's fixed now. Hopefully that's fixed. But we'll go into the intro here. If I can remember how to do it. Christ, this lads, lasses, and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mono from Mono CFC, and welcome to Season 2 of Feeling Blue. Let's go. Alright, welcome to Feeling Blue. Now, usually I do 7 points. I like to stay true to those 7 points. This one I'm cheating a little bit. I will say I'm cheating a little bit. I've got 8 points because I had already kind of established my 7 points that I was going to talk about, and then we scored another goal. I wasn't expecting us to, so I kind of had to add them in. As I said, this was a game of two halves, very obviously, and I'll talk about why I think that was as we get into this. I think we should start off, obviously there's not going to be anything for this. There's not actually going to be much in the way of mediums and bads. I actually have one per box, which may be a bit overly positive. But when you score 6 goals in a game, I think that we just have to be overly positive, and we're showing signs now of, like, even though there were some shaky moments in the first half, that second half performance, if you think about it, if you take it half by half, we won that second half 4-0, and it was pretty much comfortable, apart from obviously Lamina scoring a goal, but he probably shouldn't have been on the pitch anyway. Let's not talk about that. Let's go into the first player. The first player that I'm going to be putting into the good box, because we'll start on the left here, is for Nicolas Jackson. Now, he's been getting a lot of kind of stick for ages now, and the one thing that we've always said, even when he's been getting that stick, is that his hold-up play and the way that he brings other players into the game is his biggest asset. Obviously, he can score goals. We know he can score goals. He scored our second most amount of goals last season after Palmer, and he got another one here. Admittedly, I missed it. I missed the first 10 minutes because I definitely didn't have a power nap before and fall asleep and missed the first 10 minutes. But there we go. I missed the first 10 minutes of the game, but I obviously did see the goal in the replay. Very decent goal from Jackson. If you get a goal contribution, you usually get into the good box. But it wasn't just the goal, it was his overall game, and the fact that he was being that link and dropping deep to be able to get us through, especially in the first half, when we really struggled to do that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, in the way we kind of played through the lines in the second half, but we kind of struggled to do that in the first half, and he was the one that was kind of helping us to do that a little bit. And part of the reason why we were so successful at that was being able to get the ball up to Jackson, him pop it into our more creative players, and then us progress from there. And again, I'll kind of talk about this a little bit more, but the way that Moresco's football works, it's very back and forth. It's not very like, okay, we progress. It's a lot of kind of taking one step back to go 2 steps forward. And I think that Jackson is always going to be that player that is kind of like, we need to take that one step back, and then he can set all the other players off to do that. I think he had a pretty decent performance, especially in the second half. I think he was really, really good. He got an assist as well. And when he was replaced, we didn't really seem like we lost much, and which is a good thing, because it kind of shows how good our depth is. And that's one thing I do want to highlight. It's just how insane our depth off the bench is for us to bring on absolutely world-class players. Obviously, there's been all this talk in the media about, oh, Chelsea's squad is massive, and look at how they're treating all their players. Oh, just shut up. Shut up, man. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. We have a very succinct squad of players. The majority of the players that they kind of speak about are youth players that aren't even involved, or players that are on the way out, and stuff like that. But the squad that we do have, the 26 to 28 players that we do have in the squad are just world class pretty much everywhere over the pitch, and it's nice knowing that we can actually just bring on players and we don't really lose much. But Jackson was really, really good in the second half too, but mainly in the first half. I think he had his most impact. Let's move into another player that I kind of touched on there, and something that we kind of really struggled with was playing through the center of the pitch. And I'm going to be putting Moises Caicedo in the medium box, and this isn't just for him. I'm using his picture, but this point in general is for the midfield as a whole. And in fact, I'll actually I'll put a little balance icon here so we can kind of talk about this. This is just for the midfield as a whole, because in the first half, and the reason why I'm putting it in the medium box is because in the second half I think they were much improved. In the first half, our midfield was so awful, and it wasn't just Caicedo, obviously. As I said, he's the one I would like to highlight because I think he was the worst of our midfielders, but I don't think Gusto playing in that inverted role played particularly well either. I don't think that Enzo got on the ball as much as he probably would like to, and he was getting a bit run past. Obviously, he was playing a little tiny bit further up than Caicedo was, and it just felt like that connection that we usually have between the midfield and the attack just wasn't there. Like, almost every single time that we got the ball into the midfield, we'd get caught on the ball, or our passes which wouldn't be like responsive enough. And what I kind of spoke about a little bit there with us playing it backwards to play forwards, a lot of this starts with us playing it into the midfield to Caicedo or Gusto with their backs towards the opposition's goal, and they have to play it back to our centre backs or around the corner to kind of get us forward. And in those instances, we just could not get out. It was one of those situations where every time Caicedo or Gusto or Enzo, whoever was getting on the ball in those deeper positions, the Wolves players were on our backs, and we just kept getting the ball lost. Not only that, I do think Caicedo and Gusto and Enzo were a bit kind of lackadaisical in terms of defending too, and obviously we saw that. Seeing one of the new members has come in with the emotes. And yeah, and I just feel like in that first half we kind of got overran. But the reason why I'm putting them in the medium box and not the bad box is because I don't know what Enzo Moresco said, but he must have given them a right bollocking, because they immediately fixed up in the second half, and we got the kind of balance between, like, okay, if the ball's going into the middle, it has to move quickly, it has to move immediately, or just be recycled and go back to the centre backs. And we got that right in the second half. And part of the reason why we kind of ripped Wolves apart was the fact that they were committing their players to try and step on the gas and get us like they were doing in the first half, but we were actually moving the ball quicker and they weren't able to catch up to us, or they were just giving fouls away. Let's talk about fouls, shall we? Because I'm going to be putting something in the bad box, and this is a bit of a annoying thing, because I said I don't want to talk about this, but bloody hell, the referee was terrible in this game. There was 2, but arguably 3 Wolves players that should have been sent off in this game. The 2 that I think are nailed on that should be off: Ryan Aït-Nouri committed way too many fouls. He committed at least one, he was on a yellow card, at least 2 other fouls that were yellow card offences, wasn't sent off. Mario Lemina, as I mentioned at the top of this, again, another one of those who was on a yellow card, committed another horrific challenge on the halfway line as we were transitioning, didn't get a second yellow, he could have gone off. I think the challenge on Caicedo, which got him injured from Mosquera, was absolutely awful. Palmer I think Palmer got a yellow for dissent, so I'm not going to complain too much about that, because we know how they handle with consent and stuff. But the challenge that he actually got that yellow from that dissent yellow from, I think wasn't a foul. So it kind of equals out that way. But yeah, I just wanted to mention this quickly. I'm not going to rag on too much about it, but there's just like, I feel like that there was too much encouragement from the referee to allow players to put in challenges that were dangerous, and that's the kind of thing which I the reason why I talk about this, and the reason why I kind of want to bring it up, is that obviously we can talk about the referees and how they affect games in terms of score lines, but in this I think it's a matter of protecting the players. Now we saw that Caicedo obviously got absolutely hammered with a challenge which could have been a red, and wasn't a red. I think a yellow is fair. We can say it's fair, sure. He is obviously challenging for the ball. It's not like it's too dangerous, it's not too high or whatever. But it's one of those things where those types of tackles and those types of challenges were encouraged by the referee throughout the whole game because they just weren't getting punished for them. And it ends up with Caicedo getting hurt, and I hope that he's not too badly injured. Obviously we've already seen that Lavia supposedly has some kind of minor hamstring issue, and that's why he didn't play today. So if Caicedo gets injured too and isn't able to play, that like 6th position is going to be a bit of a problem area for us, because obviously we don't have Leslie Ugachukwu anymore. He's gone out on loan, and we don't really have anyone else that can play there, and we're going to have to kind of play Enzo there, or maybe Vega there, and have Kieran and Dewsbury Hall come on. That's kind of the thing we'll have to go to. But yeah, I just wanted to note that quickly, mainly just so I could put something in the bad box, because we weren't perfect today. Let's go into more goods, and I briefly mentioned him there, so I'll bring him up now. I'm going to be giving a good to Moresco, because, and I said this a lot when we were talking about Poch last season, part of the reasons why I would put Poch into the good box last season was from when he'd made mistakes and he hadn't set us up well in the first half, but he'd corrected those mistakes and then pushed us on in the second half. And I think Moresco, again, I don't know what he said to the players at half time. I don't know if it was just him saying, look, switch on, play the ball quicker, play it through the middle, we'll get through, we'll get goals, get it out to Noni Madueke as quickly as possible type of thing. But whatever he said in the dressing room at half time clearly worked, because we came out and looked a completely different team. The midfield, as I said, seemed completely overran in the first half, looked absolutely amazing and was able to pass out really, really easily. And yeah, and we're seeing signs now of that Moresco ball that I have been genuinely rooting for ever since we were even linked to Enzo Moresco in the first place. And I've been trying to kind of portray throughout my previews and all of my kind of analysis of Moresco that this is a system, this is a footballing philosophy that can work for Chelsea and can work and get us success. Now obviously it's very early days, so I'm not going to get too uppity about it, but this is against a Wolves team that are a very good Wolves team, let's be real. I didn't think that they would be as good as they've kind of shown in the first 2 games. Obviously they've lost their first 2 games, but they're playing very, very good opposition, Wolves, so we can't really discredit them that much. But I think they played pretty decently against Arsenal. They played pretty decently against us for half of the game. And again, they could have had more goals in this game. They were disallowed a few. So they could have had more goals. I think this is a good against a team that is very good at usually absolutely battering us. They have, as I said, I think I said in my previews, like in the last 8 games we'd only won 1 game against Wolves. Now we've made that 2 in 9, which is nice, so hopefully we can do the double over them this season. But yeah, I think Enzo is showing, like, and again, it's kind of the adaptions, and the thing which we kind of discredited, and I personally discredited Enzo for before he kind of came to the club, was usually we saw when he was managing Leicester, that stubbornness and that inability to adapt and that inability to kind of change his ways. We've already seen that he can do that now, and that's like basically my main concern about how he manages the football teams. So now he's got that out of the way, I think we can really push on and actually put in a pretty decent showing this season. Obviously we've seen signs of the shaky defence, and we've seen signs of the midfield, again, not particularly working in the first half, but obviously he corrected that in the second half, and I think that as long as he knows how to make those corrections, and he's making those corrections, and we win, I don't mind if we have a terrible first half. as long as we win the second half, and I've said this last stream, in football it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So as long as we're winning every single game, I don't care if we concede 7-8 goals as long as we score 9, if you know what I mean. So, and this was one of those games where we conceded a lot of goals, but we scored 6, so it doesn't really matter. So we could be happy at least in that regard. Let's talk about, I apologize by the way, because I'm kind of edging you guys because I'm specifically leaving like the exciting players till last because I want to talk about them last. Pause. I shouldn't say it that way. The next player I'm going to be talking about is a player which I don't think a lot of people would kind of pick up as a player that was a standout in this game. I particularly like watching how he plays because he plays in a very specific position that is very important for the system, and it's Levi Colwill. I think Levi Colwill was one of our better players, especially in the second half, because he, obviously playing as that central centre-back, is tasked with being the one to break the lines, being the one to spray the ball out to the wide areas, being the one to kind of start all of our attacks. Now, in the first half, again, suspect defensively, we can always say that our backline was very suspect defensively, but the way that he was controlling the game from the back and from that central centre-back position in the second half specifically was absolutely superb. And we saw like glimpses of that Brighton-esque Levi Colwill, where he could just pass the ball wherever he wanted. He can make those not only progressive passes, but the penetrative passes that kind of break, as I said, break the lines and kind of get through the initial press and allows us to kind of turn and get on the attack. Now, if you notice when we played in that second half, even though we weren't on the counter attack, we were actually in possession. Every single one of our attacks looked like a counter attack because Wolves would commit their men forward, Colwill would break the lines with a pass to Caicedo, who, again, as I said, was much improved in the second half, or Enzo Fernandez, who was kind of dipping to the left-hand side a lot of the time to get the ball. I think he was being able to then pick up the ball and play it through. Obviously, Palmer was dropping deep. Obviously, Jackson was dropping deep at times too. And I kind of spoke about this way back when I was talking about Enzo's tactics and how they could kind of suit our team, and I actually mentioned that I feel like Axel Disasi would be a great candidate for this spot because he's a very good progressive passer as well, and he does kind of mirror Vestergaard, who was playing in this role before when he was managing Leicester. Colwill, I don't know why in my head I didn't think, oh yeah, Levi Colwill would be the absolute perfect player for this position, because he is. And as I said, as long as he can shore up defensively and make sure that he and Fofana obviously can kind of stop conceding chances that they shouldn't be conceding, I think that he is going to be such a valuable player to us, not only in terms of actually defending, but just the way that we start attacks, because he is the start of every single one of our attacks. If you go and watch any of our goals, I guarantee for the majority of them, maybe 5 out of the 6 was probably started from Colwill. So he had a very, very good game. Let's talk about. Cool. I think I've been leaving off for a while. Let's talk about Noni Madueke, because not only is this just me. This is cathartic to me because I said in my preview that Noni Madueke was going to be so important to this game because I saw how Bukayo Saka absolutely ripped apart Wolves in that Arsenal game, and I was like, Madueke can do the exact same thing. I looked at it and I was like, he can do the exact same thing, and he did that. And not only did he do that, but he slated Wolverhampton beforehand and then backed up what he said. And to be honest, I'm a big fan of when players have an attitude and players are cocky, as long as they can back it up. And I think this was really, really funny. And again, I spoke about this in my winners and losers video way back at the start of the season, that I thought that Noni Madueke, out of every single player in the squad, was going to be the biggest winner this season under Moresco, because of how Moresco uses 1v1 wing play and uses the ability to stretch the defense with his wide players, and Madueke is obviously so good at doing that because he can go both ways. That's the thing which about Madueke, which I think is the most deadly thing, and we saw it in this game. We saw it against Servette when he scored against Servette. But the fact that he is so able to go on either side it's just a nightmare for a defender, because most defenders, especially wide defenders when you're a fullback, you are content with you study your player that you're playing up against, that winger, and you go, right, if this guy's a right footer, I know he's going to go around me, or if he's a left footer, I know he's going to cut inside and try and get on that side, so I need to shepherd him onto his weak foot. You can't do that against Noni Madueke because he doesn't have one. He doesn't have a weakness. He either goes around you and tries to put it in on his right foot, or just blasts it through the goalkeeper's legs like he did for one of his goals, or he cuts inside on his left foot and just blasts it in on the other side, which is what he did for one of his other goals. And he's just... It was one of those things where I kind of mentioned... because in my preview, and the team that I put out was very similar to the team that we kind of actually ended up playing, except for obviously Lavia wasn't playing and Caicedo was kind of filling in that role, where I thought that if we got someone that was genuinely like an actual creative player like Palmer in that 10 role with Madueke out wide, that would be an absolute nightmare for any defense, because they are so good together, and obviously they can switch. Not only can they like build off of each other, and obviously they did in this game very, very well, but the fact that they can rotate and they can kind of, if Madueke has gone on a mazy run into the centre, Palmer can stay wide and be there for when the ball gets recycled, and then we've got danger from there and things like that. And obviously we get to see the best of Noni Madueke against the Wolves team that for the most part was just not set up to deal with a very intensive winger, and actually they were a lot more open than I expected them to be. I thought they were going to be a bit more pragmatic against us, knowing our history of not being able to break down low blocks. I imagined that they were going to be a bit less forward thinking. Obviously I did mention that they do like to press, but I thought that once we actually had possession of the ball, they would drop deep a little bit more. It didn't really matter what they did in this game. I think Noni Madueke came to Wolverhampton with a point to prove, and he proved it. He proved it. That's all I'll say. Let's talk about another player, because we kind of spoke about him briefly there. Cole Palmer. And we'll put this here, because I run out of every single time I have to put Cole Palmer into the good box of one of these videos or one of these live streams. I just run out of superlatives to talk about him, because like, also I just realized I haven't put the updated Palmer picture in here. Never mind, I'll fix that next time. Because genuinely, there is nothing that he cannot do. He was like, again, he showed his we obviously talk about the goals a lot with Palmer. We talk about him scoring all the penalties. We talk about his 13 goals from open play. But I think the thing which doesn't get stated as much, which is crazy because he's a creative midfielder, is just how good he is at providing for his teammates. He got 4 goals and assists in this game, which was 3 of those were assists. Obviously he got 1 goal, and his goal, by the way, that goal is, not only is that just nuts, and I know technically it probably shouldn't have been allowed, the ball was moving, but let's be real, if the ball wasn't moving, it wouldn't have changed anything. So I think that argument is silly. Obviously you need to follow the rules, there's no exceptions with that, but I don't think it's clear and obvious enough to them to kind of overrule it. His goal is insane, because we saw that kind of deft touch before. I think it was in the Everton game, right? I think he lobbed Jordan Pickford from last season, where he scored a similar goal on his right foot. He did that exact same thing on his left foot. And it's, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about Sanchez here, because I've seen a lot of people kind of talking about him in the chat, and obviously this goal that I'm talking about starts with Sanchez. I do think Sanchez was better in this game. I will say, I think that he was much improved from what we have seen. I think that his long distribution specifically really improved. I think that it was one of those things where he didn't really get tested in terms of him being able to. I think that pretty much every single goal that we conceded in this game, I don't think Sanchez could have done much about, so I can't really talk about him in terms of actually shot stopping, but I think his distribution was much better in this game. I still think he had a few shaky moments, and I think he always will have one of those shaky moments in him. He's just got that in him, I think. But as long as he's performing less of those bozo moments, and he's playing like how he played today, I think we'll be able to go forward from there. Someone asked me a question I wanted to talk about, or someone said something. Tactical analysis on this match. I might make a tactical breakdown on this game because of how interesting this was. I do need to quickly check though when our next game is and if I have enough time. Because I think our next game is are we playing Civet again? We might be playing Civet again. I'm not sure. Let me just quickly check that. We play Civet on the 29th of August, so 4 days from now. I might be able to get that out in time. I'm not sure. As I said, I'll try to do a tactical breakdown, but obviously a lot of these types of the tactical breakdowns specifically take a lot of kind of time because I just have to basically constantly rewatch the match over and over and just find patterns and things like that. But yeah, so I'll obviously that game is on Thursday at 9. I think that's a 7:30 kickoff. So the preview for the Civet game at least will be either out on the day before or the morning of. Probably the morning of. If I want to do a tactical breakdown, I'll probably have to do that for the Friday, maybe? Not Friday. Why did I say Friday? The Wednesday, rather, or Tuesday, probably. Let's get on to the final point here, and then we'll do our poll. And this is my cheaty point, because I said I was going to do 8 points here and not 6. And it's for the Portuguese connection, because I didn't know how else to fit these two in here, but Neto and Felix have clearly immediately got some kind of brothership that's going on, or brotherhood rather, that's going on, and you could tell that they were always looking for each other when they got onto the pitch. And yeah, and second debut goal for Joao Felix, which I think is, yeah, I mean, we saw glimpses of how good he could be in his first stint, but we didn't have a very good manager. Now I think we have a manager that suits him better, and I think that's kind of the thing which has always limited Felix, is that he's never found a home. And I think that now that he's kind of found an environment that he can thrive in, that hopefully we get to see the best of him. Obviously we got him for quite cheap considering how his price tags have been kind of fluctuating in the past. He got him for quite cheap, and he got a goal off the bench, and it's a beautiful goal too, with Neto cutting it back to him, which is why Neto's in here. And we actually kind of see in that there were a few instances. I do want to say there was a few instances where, like, Felix, I remember specifically one that I want to talk about where Joao got the ball in the central area, and it was very obvious that he needs to pass to the right, but you could tell that he is so connected with Neto that he's like, I need to pass this back to Neto. Where is he? Where is my brother? And he passes it left and gives the ball away. But I'm just like, it's nice to see that we've kind of got those connections, and I think that's the best way to kind of get your team up and running, is to have those small little connections of players. Like, we know how, like, for example, Palmer and Madueke have obviously played in the England youth setup together, and I think that those two have a very good connection. Neto and Felix have a similar thing where they're like, okay, they're on the same wavelength, and again, obviously that helps with the communication. Obviously they can both speak Portuguese to each other. Obviously we've got Vega on that side too, so we can have that little Portuguese triangle, which would be nice. But yeah, I think those two, again, for the limited minutes that we got, I think that from those two, I think that they played really well, and I couldn't really go this game without mentioning them and putting them in the good box because they got goal contributions. I saw someone talking about Osimhen. I've said this before. I'll put it out here. I don't think we need Osimhen. I don't think that he would suit our team. I think that his price tag is way too high for what he'd actually bring. And if our forwards, Jackson and Felix, are going to be scoring goals in games like we saw today, they both got goals, I don't think we need him. Genuinely, I don't think we need him. And I think it would be silly to kind of harm the development of someone like Jackson, who's got plenty of potential and brings more to the table in terms of overall gameplay, just to bring in a star name. I don't think that deal will ever happen anyway, just because of agent contracts and price tags and wages and things like that. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. But as long as we got Jackson and Felix firing as our nines, then who cares? We don't need it. Let's run the poll, because it's time to vote for the True Blue, and I'm going to be putting in 4 players as always, because that's the only amount I'm allowed to do, because YouTube still haven't given us options to put more than 4. Let's put in the players that I think are obvious. Obviously, Madueke and Palmer. They are the obvious two. I'm going to put Colwill in here because I think he was instrumental to how we played. And then, you know what? I'm going to put in Enzo Moresco. because I don't think any of the other players really stood out to me as like, hey, they actually changed the game really much. They were kind of just like beneficiaries of the game as a whole. Let's start the poll. And whilst you guys are doing that and voting on that, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Because my throat is hurting very badly from talking a lot. This is very, very difficult. Because this is the thing, it's like, I always like giving the benefit of the doubt to, or rather football usually gives the benefit of the doubt to goal scorers. If someone assists 3 goals and someone scores 3 goals, they're obviously going to give the match ball to the player that scores 3 goals. So most people would be like, oh, Madueke is the man of the match here. But I'm a big believer in that. And again, maybe this comes from my love from players like Cesc Fabregas, for example. But like, I'm a big believer in that assists are so... that assists should be celebrated so much more than goals are. Because they are, like, you don't get goals unless they're assisted, unless it's like solo runs. So and obviously Palmer got 3. I said I don't want to influence you guys' vote. You guys can vote for whoever you want. In the grand scheme of things, the True Blue is always voted by you and not by me. Personally, I would choose Palmer, but there we go. That's just my bias to creative players. I assume you guys are going to be picking Madueke, and the sun is coming straight through my window and it's making my face cam really, really bright. I apologise for that. I agree with that. I think it's harder to assist than score to. And it's just like, I love the, for me personally, I just love the, I feel like assists are always so much more impressive than goals are. And like a really, really good assist is so much prettier to me and so much more enjoyable to watch than a good goal is. Like my favorite goal of all time, I have two of my favorite goals of all time in terms of an actual goal, and the quality of the goal rather than the actual moment. Obviously, people will talk about, oh, Drogba's header against Bayern Munich and things like that, but my 2 favourite goals of all time are, I think it's Jack Wilshere's goal against Norwich for Arsenal, that really nice little bit of combination play that they played back then, but the main one is obviously the Cesc Fabregas assist to Andre Schürrle. That is just such a beautiful assist, and it lives rent-free in my head. That goal lives rent-free in my head. I'm just like, every time I see it, I'm just like, how has Cesc managed to pull that off? Genuinely, I have no idea. But yeah, let's end the poll, because I think you guys have put in your votes. It's disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay, you guys have voted for Noni Madueke, who did score 3 goals and I assume is going to get the match ball. I didn't plug the memberships or anything today. I probably should do that. Yeah, join the memberships if you want. We got a few more over the weekend, so that's nice. But yeah, I think that'll do for the stream. I think this is a really good result for us to take forward. I think this is again, we saw some negative signs. We'll obviously always see some negative signs as we are building this project, but I think we saw real signs of this project can take us forward. Also, we've got, like I said, our next game is against Servette in the Conference League, and we should be absolutely battering them, in my opinion, after this performance. Remains to be seen what kind of team we're going to put out against them. I think we'll put in a much more rotated side. Obviously, I'll talk about that in my preview, which should be out, as I said, on the morning of or the day before. Probably the morning of, if I decide. If I do a tactical breakdown for this game, then it will be the morning of. If I don't, then expect it on the day before. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out as ever. I'm going to hit the outro. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's not muted this time. I don't think it will be. Pray for me. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, everyone. And I'll talk to you in the next video, which will either be that tactical breakdown or the preview. Peace. And that was just my Feeling Blue match review for this game. I hope to see you here for the next one. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.